Now, this is the final unit of the migration topic. It's called modern migration, and it kind of begins with the First World War. See, you've seen Britain become one of the most powerful countries in the world. They've amassed an empire, they've gone through an industrial revolution, and that means that Britain is essentially one of the most rich, one of the most, should we say, powerful countries. It can do things in other countries that no one else can. See, when the First World War happened, Britain was heavily involved. They were one of the most powerful countries in the world, and the war was threatening their power. So they put all of their people and all of their might into winning. They did win the war, but pretty much they spent so much money on tanks and warfare and food and supplies and organisation that actually Britain basically bankrupted itself. It actually had to take loans from the USA to recover after the First World War. They managed to try and regain some economic prosperity in the 1920s, but again, after the Second World War, Britain was completely bankrupted. Britain lost all of that money and power and wealth. And when you are really poor, you need to focus on the things that earn you the most money. And the thing is, Britain was not earning as much money from its empire as it had been in years prior. See, Britain had monopolies, it had controlled the trade of various things across all of its empire, which means that other countries had kind of got used to it. And other countries had been creating empires of their own. The USA had become a really powerful, should we say, economic force, making loads of money from oil and a load of other things. Other countries like France and Germany had also managed to amass power. And the thing is, that meant that Britain needed to focus on trading with them, not with trading with its empire. Now, because of that, the kind of economy that Britain was running changed, and it actually inspired a lot of conversation between the people inside those empires. Because the thing is, the people inside these empires had realised that Britain was weak. The thing that was controlling them, or they were in the empire of, was weakened. They actually, should we say, couldn't force them down. They'd use all their soldiers and money. They couldn't force these groups of people to not demand important word, beginning with I, independence. See, the people of these countries had spent hundreds of years underneath the control of Britain. See, that meant that Britain's, should we say, impact on them had a long-lasting impact. See, Britain built schools in all the countries in the British Empire to teach them English. They didn't just teach them English, though. They taught them, local history, and some people had gotten to go to university and things. And that meant that there were more educated people in those countries than there had been before, which means that they knew what nationalism was. They knew that Britain was controlling their countries, and they knew that, well, their country would do better probably without Britain. And they even knew that probably their country should do better without Britain as well. On top of that, Britain had kind of called its empire to help them in the First and Second World Wars because, it controlled the countries. But those people who were fighting had realised that this was a bit hypocritical. See, they were fighting, let's say, Nazi Germany in the 1940s to try and save the world from being controlled by another country. Wait, we're already being controlled by another country. Why are we trying to fight one? You can see the hypocrisy, which basically encouraged people to go, if we're going to get rid of Hitler, we should also get rid of the British then. And on top of that, finally, is that basically other countries were realising that they should love themselves, that they had histories before Britain had turned up, which means they wanted to celebrate their own languages, their own cultures, their own societies, which I think is quite a valid idea. So the little case study that you should know about is India, for example. See, India had been calling for its own independence for pretty much 100 years before they got it. A group called the Indian National Congress created themselves in 1885. And what their job was they just called for India to become a country. Not a colony of Britain, but they wanted it to be called a country. And they were fighting from 1885 all the way up until 1947 to create India. Another famous face is Mahatma Gandhi, if you've ever heard of him. He essentially established, should we say, a publicity campaign. He did hunger strikes and spoke at various peace panels saying Britain has really had a negative impact on India and that Britain needs to consider the Indian people in, should we say, their future as a country. Now, in 1947, Britain had essentially run out of so much money that they couldn't pay to control India anymore. So they organised a partition. They organised India to become its own country and to split it up to create Pakistan and India in 1947. And to be honest, it didn't go too well, but you don't really need to know the point of that. What you need to know is that India and Pakistan were created, some of the first countries, should we say, to escape British control. And that also meant that other countries who were under British control knew they could get out. They knew that they could escape British control if they wanted to, if they tried hard enough. And so for most of this section, you're going to see a few examples of that happening. Now, for you to effectively revise, you need to know the answer to these 3 questions then. 1, how did the World Wars affect Britain? 2, why were there more countries in the British Empire demanding to become independent? And 3, how did India manage to claim its independence from Britain? Check the textbook pages on your Teams pages, and you should be able to answer those questions without me. All right, good luck.